These are the top 5 features you must know about in the latest Power BI update of October 2019. Now, these top 5 features are going to help you in a lot of ways, my friends. So this is going to help you make it easier to create new reports. It's going to let you display your dazzling dashboards in a whole new way. And not just that, it's going to help you understand your data quicker. It's going to make you run your queries faster. And oh my God, the number one feature this time, I think Power BI team has outdone themselves, and I am just speechless. So we will talk more about that. Let's start with number 5, and this feature is going to make it easier for you to create new reports. But before we start that, let me point out to our monthly update playlist, which you can use to catch up on all the recent Power BI updates, and you can access that just by clicking in the corner. And also, if you are just getting started or keep getting stuck in Power BI, then make sure to check out our complete step-by-step Power BI tutorial. My name is Avi Singh. I'm a Microsoft MVP and best-selling Power BI author. And if you want to become a Power BI pro, make sure to subscribe and click that bell so you are notified whenever I go live to answer your Power BI questions. So here we are. Let's go with our number 5, which is to make it easier to create new reports. And this Microsoft Power BI team has enabled us to do that using a new file format called the PBIDS file format. Now, this file format kind of looks like this, and Microsoft has more documentation about this, but really this normal end user would not be messing around with this syntax. Don't worry about that. Your administrators will create these files, and essentially what you're going to get is probably, I don't know, some sort of a library of files which they're going to publish in a shared folder or someplace like that. And the idea is that the end user doesn't have to worry about like what's the server name, what's the port, and all of those other intricacies. They just have these files which let them easily connect to and get started by using these sources. So I'm just gonna show you how an end user is going to use it, right? So your administrator is going to create it, and an end user will just pretty much open this file. All right, so it opened on the second screen, but it's got a Power BI file open, and if whatever the connection is requires some credentials, it is going to ask for those credentials. So let me just type them in. And once they do that, then it's going to take them through the dialog box, and they're going to get the usual get data experience. But again, they don't have to trip over. So here we go. So again, my administrator had already set up the SharePoint link in this case, and now I can just jump and select the list that I want to bring in. But again, you can think of other examples where users are connecting to or have to connect to a lot of different sources, and administrators can just make it easier for them by creating this PBIDS file. Now we're on to number 4, and this is going to help you display your dazzling dashboards in a whole new way. And that is, this feature is automatic page refresh for DirectQuery. Now, often you can build dashboards, and I have an example here, and you can tell that it's a DirectQuery by the fact that you notice that there's no data pane there. I'm directly connecting to SQL Server. So there's a whole host of data sources which do allow the DirectQuery mode. SQL Server is one, SQL Server Analysis Services is one, but there are a whole host of other sources which you can connect to using DirectQuery mode. Now again, I'll admit my default is import because I love to model and so forth. But again, for a lot of scenarios, you're using DirectQuery. But often, one of the reasons that DirectQuery mode is being used is because they want to show kind of a live data and have it update. And that is now possible using a new preview feature. So hey, make sure to turn this feature on. So go to Options, Preview Features, and within that, you're going to find this guy, automatic page refresh. But once you have enabled that, you may have to restart Power BI, and then on this side you're going to see this option. Let me expand that so you can see it better. There you go, right? So page refresh, and you can turn it on, and then you can choose the duration as you like, of course, and you can see you can set it in seconds, minutes, hours, and days. Now there's a caveat here, which is that in here you can set it to as small as 1 second, but make sure, I mean, that your data source can handle that, right? So you don't want to do something crazy like 1 second and have your database administrator come knocking at your door, right? So so be reasonable, whatever, talk to them if you need to. So this, you can set it as frequent as 1 second if you wanted to. But if you publish this report, so this is right now in Power BI Desktop, as you can see, but if you publish this report, then on the service, it is only, the lowest you can go is really 30 minutes. So hopefully, if that works for you, that's great. Otherwise, you would have to consider going for Power BI Premium, and I'm going to link to another video which talks about the Power BI licensing and Power BI Premium, and that's going to let you lower it, but otherwise you can be restricted to 30 minutes. But that's still really good, and that lets you display this dashboard in a large TV screen in a hallway, and it's going to be continuously refreshing. So again, it lets you display your dashboards a whole new way in hallways, conference rooms, or whatever, maybe media booths, conferences. So certainly a really cool feature here. All right, so let's move on to number 3, and this is going to help you understand your data quicker. And this feature is about enhancements to data profiling. Let's take a look. So data profiling has been around for a while, and it can be so useful. Now remember to turn it on if you need to, and you can do so by checking these boxes. So again, data profiling has different components. It can tell you about column quality, column distribution, column profile, and it lights up these different sections on here, right? So and you can turn each one of these on. Now the new features here are this. So if you go to, actually it's best seen if you select a date column. So if I go to birth date, somehow I was trying to drag it, and by default it shows you a value distribution. So I'm talking about this section over here, and well, I mean, it's sure, I mean, let's take a look. So what does value distribution do? So it's saying that, oh, there are 3 records with a birth date of 9/3/1963, but that's not really interesting, and maybe that's not how I would want to see it. And that's where the new features come in, that it's kind of hard, a little bit hard to find, but hopefully you're used to finding these 3 dots in here, and they're usually pointing to something good. So if you click on these 3 dots, then you're going to have options, and you can group by year, month, day, week of year, day of week, and that is going to be much more interesting. So right, so now I can see, oh, okay, I mean, wow, look at that. That's how my birth date of the customers are kind of spread out. Now remember, this is preview data, so this is not operating against the complete data set, but still, as you're exploring data, as you're starting to create a model, and sometimes you're stepping into a data set which you don't even know. So often, whether I was working within my company and working with somebody new, a new group, or working as a consultant going to a new company, often I would walk into a data set which I wouldn't know at all. And profiling data like this can really help you understand and focus on kind of the key values. Now there's one cool thing here which you can also kind of hover on it and then use that to filter as well. Say, hey, I want to kind of filter down to it, maybe because that's the only data you want, or maybe you just want to look at the records for that date. So it just makes it easy, and you can say, yep, well, give me the birthday equal 1960, and it's going to filter down just to that. So notice it added a step there for that. So really cool, and certainly makes our life a whole lot easier as Power BI developers. Let's move on to number 2, and this one is going to make your queries run faster. And this is an amazing new feature, and Power BI team just keeps on backing Power BI with new functionality. By the way, guys, if this you find a little bit overwhelming, if you're starting out and you find a lot of this stuff overwhelming, I would caution you that instead of following the monthly updates, go start with my tutorial, because that grounds you in the core concepts. All right, so and again, that's linked in the corner as well. But this is a cool new feature for those who have been around Power BI, and it's going to make their lives a whole lot easier. So let's take a look and see what Query Diagnostics is about. So here I have a demo file, and I'm going to take you to the query editor. And I just tweaked the query a little bit. I just added this line. So initially I'm bringing in all rows. I'm connecting to the complete data set, but then I just added a simple filter here to do this. And of course, for those who are familiar when the data source is SQL, Power BI often tries to fold this query up. If that doesn't make sense, just ignore that. All right, but if it does, then you know what I'm talking about, right? So basically, what Query Diagnostics does is lets us peek under the hood as to what happens. So often in a complicated query, let's switch to something that is a little more interesting. Yeah, there we go, right? So you can see for budget, or of course calendar table. I mean, often in a complicated query, there are lots of different steps, and you want to understand that how is Power BI really working? When is it issuing the query to the data source? What kind of queries is it issuing? And of course, if data refresh is taking way too long, then this sort of information can be valuable, really valuable to help you debug this. So let's see this in action, and it works really easy. I think this is a preview feature as well, so you would have to turn it on in the options, which I showed earlier. But once you do turn it on, then here in tools, you basically start diagnostics and stop diagnostics. If you're familiar with kind of SQL profiling, this reminds me of that, where you start a trace and stop a trace, right? So I'm going to start diagnostic, and you have to turn it on in the query editor dialog box, right? So again, I invoked the query editor dialog box, went to the tools pane, and now the diagnostics is, well, I clicked on this to start it, right? So, and now I can go back to my data set, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh this one table. So not, and that's what I would recommend. Don't refresh the whole data set, because then it'll be way too much information. So instead of that, I'm going to refresh just this one table and let it run. It should be pretty quick. And all right, cool, it's back. And then I'm going to go back to my queries, and now I can stop diagnostics. So watch what happens once I stop diagnostics. As soon as I stop diagnostics, Power BI has been monitoring that, collecting that information, and it's really interesting that it kind of dumps it out into, well, the only construct Power BI knows, which is a table. So it dumps it out in a table. Actually, I haven't even peeked at it. Oh, wow. So it does link to a JSON file. Oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. You could connect to it directly as well. But it dumps this file out and does some stuff. And you can study it here, but really what makes sense is to load it. Now, by default, it is not loaded, which is probably a good thing, because it's a conscious step. Otherwise, it's going to clutter your model. So you can study it here, but I think that would be pretty useless. And by the way, this is a preview feature. So far, Microsoft's instructions are to kind of ignore this table. This is trying to summarize the detail, but they've said that, well, for now, just use the detail and let us know, give us feedback on this table, whether this makes sense or not. So I'll just follow their advice and focus on the detail table. So what you want to do is right click and click enable load, right? So you want to check that. Let me do that. Enable load, and I'm going to give it a good name. I'm going to rename it to just something. So this was my sales table refresh. So that's named, and it's enable load. So now when I hit close and apply, it's going to be loaded back to my model, and now I can slice and dice that information using, of course, the strength of Power BI. Now I will say that this does have a little bit of nuanced information, and I copied step by step exactly what Power BI team was prescribing in their video. So they advise, or at least their style of using this information was kind of a column chart and a detailed table chart, and I added a query for myself as well. And let me just show you, my cheat sheet. So this is exactly what I used. So I dropped these columns, right, the axis, legend, value, and tooltips into the column chart, and this is for the table. You can pause the video if you like to when you're building this table, or come back to this later. Now, so let's come back here, and so basically, so obviously this is a very simple query, but basically it's got like one step and the second step, and you can kind of click and examine exactly what happened in there, and what kind of queries were issued. And you can see these are not really data queries. These are not really querying my sales table. This is some kind of prep that or some exploration that Power BI does, and that's okay. And this is what took the most time anyway, and this is where you can see this is my real query, and if I were to select this row, then I use another visual here where I can examine the query. And by the way, you can see that how this query was folded up to the server, and my filter clause was sent back to them. So again, a really simple example, but of course in complicated cases this can help you debug. You can step by step, you can visually see which step took a longer time, and use that to debug and optimize and tune your queries. So again, really useful information. Now, hey, I couldn't do justice to this. Microsoft Power BI team has covered this in really good detail in their video. So we're going to link to that, and it's going to jump you right into the query diagnostics. So you can check out that video later on at the end by clicking at the corner. All right, so wow, we are at number 1, and I'm breathless. I'm really, just by talking about all these amazing features so far, but this one just blew me away, and it's not a new feature, right? So it's evolutionary, not revolutionary, but it definitely rocked my world. So this one is about Q&A. Let me pull up that demo. All right, so let's start here. So first of all, Power BI team has created a brand new visual, and this is the Q&A visual, which is right here. And I think there's you see that small light bulb? I think that's the idea that this has AI powering it. That's my guess. But it's really cool. Well, what can I say? I love AI, right? I mean, I love any help that I can get from anywhere to help me analyze my data. So when you add this visual, man, and frankly, it looks beautiful from the get-go. I mean, it has these questions to get started, and of course, it has this data here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here, but I'm going to point out some of the. So again, this is Q&A as such is not new functionality. This is a new visual, and I think it's really powerful. It puts the Q&A. It allows you to put Q&A front and center in your report, right? Just have it be as big or as small as you need to. It's pretty responsive. So I mean, if I were to move it around, it's pretty responsive, so that's great. But you can have it as big or as small, and users can just come in here and type stuff in. So I'm just gonna use bookmarks to jump to that. And by the way, of course, I mean, you saw that the state of this visual can be bookmarked, so you can use this in conjunction with bookmark. So some of the new things that are there is that it very clearly highlights that, hey, what terms is it understanding? So this is a great feedback for users. Like, hey, this is how to talk to me. Like, I mean, I got sales, I got country, and then using the information icon here, it tells you that, hey, this is what I made out of a query, right? So in English, right, in normal English, it's like, oh, by the way, I mean, whatever you asked, what you typed in, this is what I understood. So I'm trying to show you country that territories are in and sale, right? So that's kind of the one example. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. Oh, that's beautiful, right? So you saw that it highlights those things, and when it doesn't, oh, this is beautiful, right? So notice here, it didn't understand there was a typo or something, and it didn't understand that. But one of the improvements is that the Q&A engine is also using is leveraging the rest of the Microsoft's AI infrastructure built in Office and built in Bing. There's a lot of stuff that's already done there. So I think it goes out to those services and say, hey, I couldn't understand this word in this context. What do you make of it? And maybe Bing or Office Engine comes back and says, well, that's probably country. And so you see, it already guesses that, and it's still showing me the right graph. So, really, really good. Say, well, red, I didn't understand it, but this is what I made out of it, and let me know if that's right, right? So, and of course, users can edit it. Now, the next one is going to be amazing. All right, are you ready? You better be sitting down for this, my friends. This is crazy. This is just nuts, right? So let's say let's say sum of sales, perfect, right? So that is 29 million. But then I say, I wonder, what about just for the costly products? Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so lots of typos. Great, there we go. Right, and it says that, hey, I don't quite understand costly. So it's showing you something in some sales, whatever, but it's not understanding costly. And this is where you can just click on this gear icon here if you're the model author, and it takes you to the Q&A experience. And of course, there's a lot of cool information here. You can review the questions that people have been asking on the model. That can be really useful. But we're going to go to this Teach Q&A, right? So Teach Q&A, and you say, well, this didn't work, and you click Submit, and it says, well, okay, I got this part which I don't quite understand. Can you help me understand this? And I say, yep. So I'm gonna go in here, and I'm gonna say standard cost. Standard cost. Great, perfect, and greater than, let's say 1,000, right? So these are costly. So I'm going to save this one, and this now gets saved into these managed terms, which you can also kind of clean up and redefine later on if you needed to. So now let's go back, and I think you have to like type it in again. And bingo. So notice that it understands it now, so it underlines it blue. And of course, well, I was having some trouble with this. Somehow it starts to count. But if we go to sales amount, perfect. Now you can see that it is a smaller number. I mean, the overall number, we started with 29 million, but now it's only doing the costly products, and that is 24 million. So guys, again, it's not a new feature, but man, it's just crazy how far this has come. So hey, if you're using kind of Q&A or planning to use Q&A, just drop in a comment and let me know. Before you go ahead and click to watch our next videos. You can watch our monthly update highlights playlist to catch up on all the other exciting stuff that has gone on in the past monthly updates, which you might have missed. And of course, if you're getting started with Power BI, and certainly if you feel overwhelmed with these updates, I would highly encourage you to go back to the basics, go to the core concepts covered in our tutorial. That's at 20%. That's going to give you 80% of the results. Oh well, I was supposed to show you the slide earlier, but that was our number one, to get the crown, Q&A improvements. And again, the Microsoft Power BI team did a great job of covering Q&A in a lot more detail. So if you care, you can also click here to jump to the video, which is going to start at the Q&A. So folks, these were the top 5 features in October 2019. And let me know if you think they delivered on this promise. Do you think they're going to help you do all of these things? Well, that's it. I'll see you next time. Until then, power on. You can click to watch the next videos, and you can click on the circle to subscribe.